Hopefully everyone's doing okay. How are y'all doing? Can you all hear me? There we go. Thank you,
Good
Brianna and
morning.
Megan. Everybody. All right, thank y'all. Um,
Good morning.
Good morning. So, so as a follow-up, let's start with this.
And then I told Pete, and then I told Pete, we should use some of these dangerous cities as training grounds for our military, National Guard, but military, because we're going into Chicago very soon. That's a big city.
Could you all hear that? I know it's kind of low on my side. I don't know if it was too low for you all. Did you all hear that?
Yes.
Anybody?
I heard it.
Okay. Just want to make sure that y'all heard this. I know we left off last class discussing troops going in there, and we had a spirited debate about whether or not it's to keep us safe and things like that. But as he said,
And then I told Pete, we should use some of these dangerous cities as training grounds for our military, National Guard, but military.
so this is why I'm always skeptical of someone telling me that they're trying to help me through force. You know, um, I've read some of your papers. I know that some of you disagree with me. A large number of you agree with me. I believe that a large number of you would be out there at the schools when they're trying to increase the police presence at public schools, would be at the school board meeting trying to shut that down, because it's not going to turn out as well for everyone, right? You understand that a student that's sleeping in the classroom now gets picked up and donked on his head in the desk. The desk and the student gets donked down onto the ground, all for sleeping in class or something and not wanting to leave and just keep sleeping. You understand what happened when you got a force that's coming through here, which clearly is probably the reason why there's been an uptick in police shootings, because we're hiring people, and I'm not saying that it's bad to hire our soldiers, but a lot of them are shoot first. It's reflexive. That's what many of them have told me. Right? Things you can get away with in war, you don't really get away with that on the mean streets of the United States. Clearly had a whole freaking revolution because the troops were walking around trying to shoot people and hurt people and do things. All right. And there's more.
All starts with physical fitness and appearance. If the Secretary of War can do regular, hard PT, so can every member of our joint force. Frankly, it's tiring to look out at combat formations, or really any formation, and see fat troops. Likewise, it's completely unacceptable to see fat generals and admirals in the halls of the Pentagon and leading commands around the country and the world. It's a bad look. It is bad, and it's not who we are. So whether you're an airborne ranger or a chairborne ranger, a brand new private or a four-star general, you need to meet the height and weight standards and pass your PT test. And as the chairman said, yes, there is no PT test. But today, at my direction, every member of the joint force at every rank is required to take a PT test twice a year, as well as meet height and weight requirements twice a year, every year of service. Also today, at my direction, every warrior across our joint force is required to do PT every duty day. Should be common sense. I mean, most units do that already, but we're codifying it. And we're not talking like hot yoga and stretching. Real hard PT, either as a unit or as an individual. At every level, from the Joint Chiefs to everyone in this room to the youngest private, leaders set the standard. And so many of you do this already. Active, Guard, and Reserve.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and
Okay. Fat soldiers need to get shape up or ship out. So what are your thoughts on either one of those things? Just want to kind of get I'd like to know how you all feel about these things.
Just doing what we had to do when I joined in '82. So, I mean, it's when the generals and admirals get lazy and fat. I mean, I don't think the focus should be solely on PT, but having been in, served in Iraq and then again in Afghanistan and Desert Storm and was in Costa Rica. But yeah, you have to be physically fit. And I think we rely too much on technology. The last time when I went to Iraq after the invasion, I took a truck unit. We had people that couldn't do two push-ups. And they were just grabbing people. So if he does what he says he does, and there's nothing new about it, it's been like that in the military forever. We just gotten slack, I guess. I've seen a lot of lack of physical fitness when I was in Iraq this last time, which that was 2008, the last time I was overseas. But I haven't seen the Army that much since, except a lot of them seem to be the focus. The senior officers is the problem.
Well, that's my issue right there. Like my issue, I would think, are you already finished with all that. You're walking the halls of the Pentagon. The only thing that you really need to dodge is a potential 747 going into the Pentagon like it did before. If I'm in my 60s, and I know that my dad used to tell me all the time before he passed, his friends would go do these tests and do all these things, and end up having a heart attack later, a couple weeks later. And it seemed fine. Now, maybe it was no correlation, but it was clearly happening. I mean, it wasn't correlation or causation, but it was clearly happening, right? So, my issue had nothing to do with active people. My issue had nothing to do with, reserve folks who can go. My issue has to do with the guys sitting in that room who are not even working and things like that. Who are not like out there, they have, I feel, how, it's like when you start when you start a job, all the younger people kind of get all that other stuff. People who've been there for a while who aren't really going out there and stuff. I'm sitting at a desk as a, and stuff like that. Like, why, do I really need to be doing this hard work and labor? I'm never going to be gone out there at 65 or 63 or something like that. I think that's the part that's getting people. But I think the biggest part, as Megan said, is the fat thing, right? Because we all understand that muscle is heavier than fat. And we know that if we're using these weird charts, right, that will say, well, if you're 5'5", you should be this much, or if you're 5'8", you should be this. You could be heavier and qualify as fat, depending on the scale, and depending on how you are measuring this, and things like that. So that becomes the other issue: is how are we measuring this thing when it comes in terms of height and weight and things like that? Because we know that these charts are old. These charts are not have not really been updated, and a lot of people are considered overweight, and because they're heavy, because of that muscle. You know what I mean? And I just think that, okay, so are we going to redo this whole thing as well with the whole weight and muscle chart so that these people can still qualify? Clearly, when you look at them, they're clearly not overweight or, fat, as he puts it.
That was an old system, but I'm just telling you this is the way the military actually is. If he's walked through the Pentagon and seen fat generals when Eisenhower was able to run 4 miles every day, even Bill Clinton never been in the military, but he would get up every morning and run 2 miles, and then every evening he'd run 2 miles. You cannot command troops, and you shouldn't be in a desk commanding troops if you can't eventually get out there and be able to pick up a rifle and go hands-on. That's the essence of the military. The military is not like any other system you're going to have. They expect a general who's a JAG officer to be able to lead troops just like an infantry. So,
Well, if you're already having people going, so my issue is this here, right? And I don't, I'm reading some of the comments as well, but I do, my issue is this, is that people are not really, there's not a lot of young people pumped to join the military. And if you're gay, then you don't need to be there. If you're trans, then you don't need to be there. At one point, if you had too many tattoos, then you can't be there. If you were smoking weed once, you can't be there or something. So you got all these things here, right? Where ultimately you can't be there, right? You are just shrinking down. And I just feel like the military is not, a series of 300, the movie 300 is not, it's not supposed to look like that. They're not all going to be out there with a six pack and everything else. I understand exactly what you say. I don't disagree with you on if you're out there doing this and that. I think it really comes down to what is fat, because you didn't tell us that we're redoing this, the system. You didn't tell us anything. You just said weight and height and stuff, and that's basically what it comes down to. So it's like, what are you talking about in terms of weight and height? And
it's kind of what the military, it's kind of what we in the military, having been retired, go through. I just, people, unless you're in, now when I grew up, we had the draft. My father was in, my grandfather was in, his grandfather was in. Everybody in my neighborhood and everybody I knew, somebody's family member had been in the military. So we were more familiar with it. These are just old standards he's going back to. These are the standards we had under Obama that he's going back to. The beards. The reason that you don't wear a beard is if you have to use a chemical mask, an NBC mask, it has to seal. If you have a beard, it won't seal. That's the primary reason for beards. Beards used to be very, very much used in the military. But when we used the threat of chemical warfare in the Cold War, couldn't wear a beard. So apparently he might have gotten information that somebody's like Russia stockpiled tons of chemical weapons again. And if they've been trying to use them and sneak them in there into Ukraine, something like that, and NATO has to go in, you got all these people that got beards and the mask's not going to fit. And those are the guys that get hit by chemicals, are the guys that are sitting in a desk. You don't shoot them at infantry.
Clark,
So-
let me say, it's one thing to say that we're not going to have beards, but when you're calling them weirdos, that's a whole nother story. And, how you're talking, it would have been a whole different story if it was mentioned like this, but you're calling them weirdos for having it. So it doesn't seem as genuine as you're making it out here. I mean, clearly you are presenting this in a much better manner, which could be accepted and stuff like that. And you're calling them weirdos and stuff because they have a beard and stuff. So that's all I'm saying. It's just about, we just need more to this, right? And I guess we'll wait and see if it's going to be updated and how they're going to look at this, and if they are going to update this actual chart and stuff. So we'll wait and see what comes from it and things like that. But hey, for a group that's out there trying to beg people to join and trying to pay them and give them this and that, and since we've moved to drones, I mean, who knows? But I will say this here. I do want to go to the previous video clip that I showed you all, where I know we talked about this last class at the start, where President Trump said that we need to treat our cities like war zone, like training for our war zones and stuff like that. And I don't trust any president to send troops into cities. I don't. I just don't. And I guess that's just my mindset. And I know that we're in a new era where people see things differently. I don't trust presidents to send troops into any city. I don't trust people trying to wiretap phones. I don't trust folks knowing what I'm texting. I don't trust any of that, right? So I'm not down with it, with any of it. And we were having a debate about this last class because we didn't really know what exactly he meant by this here. I know that we had some who felt like, hey, he's protecting buildings, he's protecting officers, he's doing this here. But he came out later on that day and expressed to us what he meant. He wants to treat them like war zone, like training zone for war. And I just think that giving anybody the chance to do this will lead to everybody having that ability to do that. It'll be a precedent, set for future presidents. And, I just think it's something that we need to really, really ask ourselves, are we willing to allow that to happen and things like this? And it doesn't matter if it's in Chicago, it doesn't matter if it's in Portland, it doesn't matter if it's in Little Rock. I don't care where it is. The fact that that you want to use it as a training ground for these war zones. And this is not like, hey, well, our military goes to certain places and they train every year. This is not what he's talking about, because he elaborates on it and says it. We need to go in there and we're going to stop it and we're going to treat it like we would a war zone, a training ground for a war zone. This is not your normal training that we do around the country each year for the military. So just think that, we need to be cautious of giving anybody the power, because then everybody up there will have that power. And I don't trust any president with that much power. I don't trust any person with that much power, because I don't think people have it in them to be a sensible people.
Yeah, I feel that the level we are regressing is so massive. It feels even to me like if this is like in Germany, if it is like the Nazis, that they just wanted, a different specific physical characteristic that fits this and that is acceptable, and now this going into all the cities is like third world countries. Sometimes they do that. So so I grew up in a third world country that was, you can see the military everywhere. Nobody said anything. It was just so normal. So when it becomes the normal, then it continues, and it's so hard to remove it. So what do you suggest? So like if it's taking place, what can we do? Like, are they asking us to give permission? Because it doesn't seem like it.
Well, it's kind of like he's telling, but he's asking, and the thing is, he's not fully there yet, right? He's like, I'm gonna do it. These guys, the governors need to be asking for this and stuff like this. And it seems like right now he's doing the, he is trying to get a public support for it, enough public support for it and things like that. And I gotta tell you, I don't think that most people, it was a point in time in Austin, like a few years ago, where it seemed like it was a drunk driver every week, and somebody was dying from drunk driving every week. And I don't think anybody would have been upset if Greg Abbott was like, you know what, hey, I gotta get National Guard down here or something to help out with the police, or send the state police to help out. But I think that we're just kind of looking at the actual levels of it and things like that. So it's one of those things where the people who, like, there are levels where the governor needs to ask for this here. It just has been a thing. It's basically a conservative ideal that the federal government does not need to come to my state and tell me what to do, right? It's a conservative ideal, right? That we're going to wait on the state to ask. And the Supreme Court has already sided with the city of Los Angeles, right? So now, can the president send folks? Yes. Did the court say you can't? Well, yes. But did the court only say that for Los Angeles? Well, we don't really know. You know what I mean? How long will it take the court to even hear the case if the military shows up there? So it's hard to know, right? And even in the case of, will it help the city? It might. It might help the city, right? I wouldn't say, hey, I wouldn't doubt that it wouldn't help the city, that it would help the city, right? But there's still the process that we have to go through. And once you jump the process, I think that's the issue there, right? It's how much power do I have as an individual? And, Kathy, I think all you can have is public outrage, but it's hard to have public outrage if your city, if you know that that 6 people are getting shot a weekend. How you gonna have outrage in that? How you gonna be mad when they show up? So we have to look past that and not look at it in terms of, well, he's gonna come help the city because the city is not helping them. The state isn't helping them. You got to look at it as a president can make that argument for anything in the future. When President Obama President Obama was in office, President Obama, he signed a bill. And he signed a bill in a law that gave the president the power to arrest anyone at any time if he feels like they are a threat to our nation. Obama signed that. And I was in my class, railing against that. And people were like, well, that doesn't matter. I was like, why wouldn't it matter? If Obama has a problem with you, he can arrest you. You know what I mean? And they're like, but Obama's just, I'm not trying to hit that stuff, man. I don't care who it is. He has the power. The president shouldn't have the power. I don't think that one person should have the power to decide the fate of people, right? That was one of the main things that we put in the Declaration of Independence, that we don't have a jury, that we put then in the Articles of Confederation, if there were anyone arrested by the federal by the military, then we will still have a jury. And that was added into the Constitution, the jury, right? Well, no one person is going to decide something because we didn't want the king. So that's all I'm saying. Right. And,
he's building on a precedent that was set back in back when Hoover sicked the Army on the veterans who were protesting in D.C.
But that's not a precedent that's set, Clark. That's not a precedent that's set. Because if you go back there, then you'll see that we were slowly incorporating. We were still in that time when the Bill of Rights and all that stuff weren't really being attached to the people and stuff like that. It was this whole thing going on. We have moved past that and moved out of that a traditional way of doing things to a modern way of doing things where we actually use the Constitution in a way where it does help the people and it does give the people the power and it does give the states whatever power that they have as well. So we were moving out of that pre-Roosevelt, at least FDR, and post-FDR, 2 different times and things like that, where we start to really to truly intertwine the Constitution with the state and federal government in a different way and the Bill of Rights and apply those things in that manner. So even the courts, like you're saying, right? The courts weren't even upholding these things and stuff. We had people going to prison because they were protesting against World War One and stuff. But that's because everything hadn't really truly been applied yet until FDR got there, and then after him, we started to see those things being applied and stuff like that.
I'm just saying the precedents for doing these things are throughout. You had Wallace standing in the door, and his National Guard's adjutant general being federalized and having to go arrest his governor because his governor.
That's
was
because, as I
moved
mentioned
to ban
last class, the
Cold War.
Supreme Court had ruled that way, so they
Right.
had that power.
So until the court, now the biggest check is Congress. Congress can throw the president out for any reason they want, and they have cut presidents down real quick when they feel that they've exceeded the Congress's dignity, like they did with Nixon. But if you, that's the ultimate thing is Congress. Congress is the ultimate check. That's where the ultimate power is. President can't remove a congressman. He can't arrest a congressman. He can't do anything to a senator or a congressman. In fact, no one can. The only
Well,
one that can do it is
they
Congress.
arrested. They called down and had some had some Congress people arrested in Baltimore.
They had them arrested when they were outside, and the Congress, again, Congress had the check. If Congress didn't want them arresting their people, they would simply remove the president. There's not a whole lot a president can do.
Okay.
Once you turn your Congress against you, I mean, they can try you. They can try you for look what they did to poor Bill Clinton. All he did was cheat on his wife, supposedly, and they draw that guy up and had a full trial. Now he was found not guilty, but they put him through the whole ringer over him supposedly lying. And again, I never figured out what that one was. They said they didn't like Bill Clinton or they wanted to put a precedent. But
Well-
Congress has that power, and that's our ultimate check is our Congress.
Well, no, that's not an ultimate check. Each one of those branches have an equal amount of check, and I will say this here to you, I'm not gonna say a poor Bill Clinton. I'm not going with that. You cannot be a party that is advocating for sexual harassment and bosses forcing employees to do stuff, and then you being the main person doing it and people still being on his side. So I'm not going to go with a poor Bill Clinton on that. He did something he shouldn't have done. You claimed that you were against this, and now you're for it because you don't want him gone. So I'm sorry, I can't side with old Bill Clinton there, and he's not poor Bill Clinton. He's someone who probably should have lost his job. I mean, he should have lost his job based on what he and his party believe was wrong. I'll leave you with this here, Clark, and everyone. I have no issue with someone disagreeing with me on how I feel about it. But I can tell you, I'm always going to be consistent no matter who the president is. I don't care who it is. I'm going to be against it. I don't care if I campaign with you and you came to see me in class and shook my hand every day before you went on your campaign and you became the president. If you pull something like that, I'm going to be against you. I'm just not. I mean, I just am, and I'm not going at you here, Clark. I'm not saying you, but I'm saying there are people who can find a reason around not supporting someone else doing this if they don't agree with them, but finding ways to find excuses for someone who they do agree with. And you seem like someone who just kind of understands this is what's said. So if Obama does it, if Biden does it, whoever does it, as I mentioned, the mythical Jasmine Crockett as president, if she does it, then you'll be fine with this because you're like, this is just how it has been throughout the history. Congress need to do something. I, on the other hand, will not be fine with any of them doing it because I always believe everything is small and they try to inch at it and they try to get us used to it till eventually we're at the same state that Kathy was as a child of just accepting it. And I don't want to get there to accept it at all. So I don't not trust the government people. I just don't want to give them too much power. I don't know. Thank you, sir, and everyone else. Man, yes, I'm through with it. I'm through with all the government. You must live in the city of Kyle with me, so you don't trust the government. She said, I don't trust any government. I look at it like this. If I just, I believe people, ambition. Everyone is ambitious, so they're gonna try to get whatever they can get. So, All right, we
like Vivi.
we were rocking and rolling through these things. I think we're here. I think we're here, right? This is where we are. So you may see these again in your future. These three here. So please make sure that you understand these. Conservatives, liberals, and libertarians. So in this state, this is what we have, right? We have lots of conservatives. We have a lot of liberals, and we have a lot of libertarians. Probably not as many as they have in Colorado, but we do have a lot of libertarians. Conservatives, they support a free market that's unfettered by the government control and action to preserve proper moral values and oppose the programs that involve the redistribution of wealth. And ultimately, these guys here are like, hey, we need government here to preserve our values and to oppose programs that involve these things. Liberals, right? Liberals, they believe that government should be used to regulate the economy, to protect the disadvantaged, civil rights and liberties, and to promote equality. And libertarians. So libertarians believe in a hands-off approach, right? And they support a hands-off philosophy, right? They believe in individual liberty and personal responsibility, right? We're free, that the government, we don't need the government around us, and you are responsible for yourself and your own things, right? Basically, if I want to help you, I will. You're not going to force me into something, or at least I don't believe you should, according to a libertarian. Okay. Don't worry about the year. I just want you to focus on right there at the bottom, because it hasn't changed over the years, where it says independent. You see that 28%? It's normally 28% or 32% or 33% or something. That's a lie. It is clearly, I don't believe that people are independent. If you vote in if you vote in elections, right? So let's see. I vote all the time. I vote in every election all the time. And I vote Democrat. So you're a Democrat, right? No, I'm an independent. But I do look at both sides, but the Democrats just seem to have better things, the candidates that they have, so I vote Democrat. So you're a Democrat? No, I'd vote for a Republican if they had some views like the Democrats. So what does that make you, right? So you talk to people and you're like, so you are not an independent, you are a Republican, if that's how you vote every time. Now, there are some folks who are in this class, I know, who are like, oh my gosh, can we just get through government? I can't wait until December. I'll never do this stuff again. those people are probably independents. They probably don't pay attention to anything in government. And you talk to them, they're like, I don't know. I guess that guy, I like his name. You know what I mean? So those people are probably your true independents and stuff like that. It doesn't mean that, an independent is not, well, I voted for a Republican once. I voted for a Democrat once. No, an independent is someone who's truly looking at it and, once, have a bunch of views, and have views that are basically just on different sides and they vote that way. And, but most of our independents, I believe, are people who don't vote at all
Yeah.
because they don't care. Kinky Friedman. If it ain't Kinky, it ain't me. There we go. That's Kinky. So we talked about the two-party state, right? The factions in the Democratic Party. This is just a review of things you already know that we've gone over in the past, right? We have a two-party, the Democratic Party kind of looked like a two-party system, right? When when the Republicans were the party of liberals, they sort of controlled everything. And under Hoover, they kind of ran the country into the ground. And now all those liberals ran to the Democratic Party. So now the party is packed with liberals and conservative. Liberal and conservative. So it looks like a two-party system, right? Where ultimately the only important election in Texas was the primary. All you got to do is win the Democratic primary, and you would win the election in Texas, right? Clearly, you always know which party is the conservative party based on who's running Texas, unless you got the military there helping keeping you in power like E.J. Davis did. Once the conservatives started to leave the Democratic Party and move to the Republican Party, it didn't really change much because the Democrats who were still there were conservative Democrats. So nothing really made a difference. And we saw a new governor, the first Republican governor since E.J. Davis, but that guy was also a conservative and things like that. And we start to see this rise of the Republican Party, which essentially is the Republican Party is not rising so much as the conservatives had decided to just leave their party and let the liberals have it and just go ahead and just move on over with old Ronald Reagan and everyone else, right? So now we have three Republicans win a statewide race. We get Bill Clements, who wins the race as governor as a Republican in '78, and he comes back again later. And we get Kay Bailey Hutchison, who wins in 1992. And now we have two conservative Republican senators over Texas and two Republican senators for the first time since E.J. Davis. And ever since 2000, the Republicans have been in charge. And in 2010, what they did was redistrict to ensure that they remain in charge forever. And there won't be any sort of competition at all with the redistricting and gerrymandering and things like this. And when you look at the numbers of voters in Texas, clearly they are the majority in Texas, right? Now, you could argue, no, they're not. They're not the majority. There are more liberals in Texas where they're not voting. So right now, all I can go off are numbers. You don't have to write this down if you're writing down something, but I want you to see that. So your textbook talks about the sources of Republican strength, right? They talk about Houston, Dallas, Fort Worth, Panhandle, East Texas, right? The Hill Country and all these areas. But Houston and Dallas are not sources of Republican strengths anymore. Yes, there are a lot of Republicans there, but those areas are basically pretty liberal. My question to you all is, why is it very liberal? Like, how did Houston and Dallas become a very liberal area very quickly in a short period of time? How?
A lot of people from California and New York and South Carolina moving in.
Okay, so that's the answer. But I need to know how or why.
Oh,
Because
why
that is
we
the
moved
answer.
to the area?
Huh?
why they moved in. It's low taxes, nice people.
Oh,
You know,
okay.
there's so many
Okay.
reasons to get the hell out of South Carolina.
He said, nice people. Nice people. Okay. But like, okay, but who encouraged them to move here? That's where I'm headed. Let's see if anybody has that answer. The nice people. Nice people.
governor?
Yes, John, we're nice people. I'm sorry.
The governors at that time?
Thank you very much, ma'am. So Rick Perry had this thing, right? I forget what it was called, some enterprise. I forget what it was called, right? And he put billboards in California, New York, and in Illinois. He was like, move to Texas. Companies move to Texas. Corporations move to Texas. You'll have lower taxes here in Texas. You'll have no taxes in Texas. And this was, and a lot, and this was 2000. So think about it like this here, right? Under Obama, his first term, the economy started, we were creating a bunch of jobs, a bunch of them. I mean, a bunch. But those jobs were being created in Texas. So it seemed like a slam dunk for Rick Perry to win since they're created in Texas. Rick Perry is the governor of Texas. Clearly, this is what's happening. But we found that what Rick Perry was doing, he was getting companies to move from other states to Texas. So basically, yeah, they were creating jobs. Texas economy was getting better. The jobs being created, but he was basically just moving them here to Texas. Now, you could make the argument that by moving the companies to Texas and them having lower taxes, they were able to hire more people. It's hard to know. It depends on how you want to look at it. The problem is that when they came, as Kathy said, and all y'all are talking about, right? Clark, right? The companies brought like 90% of their workforce with them. 80 to 90%. The whole reason why we're going to pay extra in taxes to help these companies get here is so they can hire us. But they weren't hiring a bunch of us. They were bringing people with them. So Rick Perry was importing liberals to Houston and importing liberals to Dallas and some upper middle class people who were willing to move across the country. And now I sell my home as you watch HGTV, right? A 2-bedroom house in one of these states, like $800,000. And you're like, what in the what? And then they're able to sell that and come down here to Texas and pay half of that and have a huge backyard and have a lot of extra money. You got that extra money, you got time to vote and all this. And he basically imported a bunch of liberals. And that's how it switched over time, like quickly. And this doesn't even count people like Clark, who came from South Carolina, because all the nice people are here, right? You know what I mean? But, he was importing liberals from other states. And it just, depending on how you want to look at it, it's, I don't know. So, all right. So I like this map because I don't know how many of you have heard of Todd Staples, but I know most of you have not. I just know you haven't. Because I was asking people 12 years ago, and people are like, I don't know who that dude is, right? So I know most of you have not heard of Todd Staples. So this is a map of people just voting when they don't know who you are. And this is why political parties are good, right? This is a good reason for political parties, because if I don't know who this person is, right? I'm looking at a name like Hank Gilbert and Todd Staples. If it was a nonpartisan race, how many more votes do you think Hank Gilbert would have gotten if you didn't know if they were liberals or conservatives or Republicans or Democrat? Hank Gilbert probably would have got probably would have got more votes than Todd Staples in Texas. It sounds like a Texas name, right? But being able to see the R next to his name and the D next to the other name, you can say, well, I don't know this guy, but clearly if he's in my party, I'm just going to vote with him. And that's what political parties do. It make it easier for you to decide who to vote for when you have no idea who these people are. You're like, look, I just showed up to vote for Rick Perry. I don't know these other people, right? I just showed up to vote for, Mayor White. I don't know these people, right? And so it allows for you to decide who to just vote for. And this is why, later on in this course, I'm going to show you a Rick Perry map. And a Rick Perry map is going to have even more red on there than this here, because people are voting in favor or against or whatever, all based on that candidate because they know him. Let's look at the factions in the Republican Party, right? The factions in the Republican Party. So we have religious conservatives, right? Religious conservatives, that they believe that you should use government to prevent abortions in most cases. They also believe that we need to bring back a prayer in school, right? And also they believe that we need to fix the families and not allowing people to marry other people, and the government should not allow things like this here, right? The economic conservatives believe that we need less government, less government oversight. We want to reduce the spending of government. We want lower taxes. We want the government to allow business to work more freely and openly and things like that. And the question that I would say, right, can somebody desire both of these? Like, can someone have all of these views? I guess is my question. So if I made the argument, no, you cannot. You cannot truly be a religious conservative, according to these views, and an economic conservative. Why would I make that argument? Like, why would I say this? Because I know people do have all these views. They embody all these views. But if I make the argument, you can't really embody all these views. It doesn't really work. Why would I say that? There we go. Because one takes government intervention, while the other one is asking for less government intervention, right? And normally it's not split into, hey, I think government should do this and not do that. It is, no, we don't want government at all, right? Government involvement is not a good thing at all, while still needing government to do the other thing, right? So it contradicts itself, it's, it ultimately, that the religious conservatives need government to achieve certain social goals, while the other would like to actually remove government from society as much as possible. I remember a guy running for office says, I want to shrink the government down so small that I can drown it in a bathtub. All right. And then he comes back later and says, we need to use, the government should be intervening in this and this and this, right? And we've seen these extreme cases and things where Terry Chavo case, or the lady who got into an accident in Dallas, and she was basically brain dead but pregnant, and they're like, we're gonna connect her to some tubes and she gonna have this baby. You know what I mean? It was things like that there where you saw government intervention and what some would argue overreach, into there. And, you can argue both sides, but clearly, reaching down into somebody's family in Florida and telling them, nah, you're not going to have her unplugged. Right. So interesting things like this here. So as we look at the organizations, right, the temporary organizations, when you go out to vote on election day, right, you'll have a precinct convention. So when you look at your voter card, it'll tell you the precinct that you're in, and you'll know where to go. And you don't have to be there that night to vote, but if you are there, whoever's in line at 7 p.m. will be able to vote. You vote, then we stay after later, and the precinct chair will sort of handle it. It's basically taking the entire county and carving it up into different sections and calling each section a precinct, right? So what we're gonna do, we're gonna take the county, split it up into different sections and call it precincts, and the Republican Party is gonna have certain precincts, the Democratic Party is going to have certain precincts, And the precinct chair is the one that goes out and talks to people in the community and gets them to come out and vote, drops off things, asks them if they want to sign or something, reminds them that there is an election coming up and things, and then preside over the convention. And in that convention, what we're going to do is choose people from our precinct to represent us as delegates. Now, if you sign up and you want to be a delegate, then okay, cool. Then we can nominate you, right? So if we need 30 people to be delegates, and there all we have is, we got 50 people there, but out of that 50 people who decided to come there and stay after, only 6 want to actually be delegates. The other ones don't want to be delegates. But I've had about 14 people talk to me and say that they would like to be delegates. They just can't be there. So I'm like, okay, hey, I have these 14 names. We'll just add them in there as delegates. So we just need to get 10 more people to put them as delegates, and then we need some backup people just in case the delegate it can't go. Now we're also going to draft, resolutions, right? So, imagine, so we have a resolution that says, whereas helmets don't work when you are on a motorcycle and you get into an accident, we shouldn't be forced to wear helmets. Cool. So we vote on it, it passes. We take that to the district or senatorial, sometimes called the county convention, depending on the county that you're in, right? It could be one of these 3 names. And we get there, and the county chair, the county person over the party will be there. The county chair of the Republican Party, the county chair of the Democratic Party will be there presiding over it, right? Now, we all get there, and it's basically the same thing, right? We're going to go over, we're going to choose delegates who are going to represent us at the state convention, right? If it's a Republican event, convention, then they're going to choose their people. Okay, I'm going to choose 25 people to go represent us. Cool, right? Now, mind you, this is 25 people out of, 30 people from every single precinct. And it's probably like 8 precincts, right? So you got 200 to 300 people there, and you're choosing, 30 people out of there who will serve as delegates at the state convention. And you need people who can serve as a backup person if somebody can't make it, right? We're also going to read off our resolutions, right? Whereas, helmets don't work, blah, 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 and we vote on it, right? Now we're going to take that resolution with us to the state convention along with our delegates. If it's a Republican county convention, then we send our delegates along with the resolution. If it's the Democratic one, then what they're going to do is make sure that the delegates look like the county, right? The county is 60% Hispanic, 40% white. They're going to try to make sure that the delegation looks like the county and represents the county. If we have 1% gay people or 3% gay people, if I can find a gay Hispanic woman, then there we go. I'm really rocking and rolling now, right? So we're going to try as best as possible. If not, then it's all good. When they get to the state convention, ultimately we're going to have all of these delegates come from other places, and now we're going to vote on our resolution, right? And we vote on that resolution. But we also choose delegates if it's a presidential election. If it's not a presidential election year, then you don't have to choose delegates. If it is a presidential election year, these are the people who go and they're out there in the crowd holding a sign that says Texas or New Jersey or whatever. And when President Trump is talking, or when President Biden is talking and he's looking out there, you can see the folks from Texas who were chosen as delegates to go represent that party at that national convention. If it's just this, if it's like next year where it's not a presidential election, then we don't choose delegates. We just choose the resolution. And now we're going to vote on that resolution again. If that resolution passes, now our party's platform is going to have, man, we don't want helmets on motorcycles. That's going to be one of our things because it passed, right? And it starts at the lowest level and just works its way up to kind of help you to understand that, it's like the bill to lawmaking process. That stuff can die at any time, right? It's a long process. It seems fast and it seems like, well, why can't these people just get stuff done? Because someone can throw a wrench in that thing and just stop it at times. And sometimes it'll get all the way there and somebody else will stop it. So, and even with the platform being this here, and we've seen this in the past, this could be the platform, but the top candidate, the governor, could say, but that's not my platform. That's the party's platform, right? Or the person who's running at the top could say, that's not my platform. That's the party's platform. So it might not even be their platform. It's just the platform of the party, right? So there we go, people. These are temporary things. These things come along during the election year and they're gone. And just so you'll know, which you don't really need this, but the precinct chair is the person who I mentioned, who is doing the action, who's doing most of the work in the county, knocking on doors and doing this here. I remember I was a precinct chair in college and stuff like this. I would knock on doors and I would keep all these papers of writing down stuff. This was before, we had the systems in place that you could type in stuff, easily. And I'm not that good with Excel, so which is why I don't do things that require me to be good with Excel. So I was just writing down names, and then you end up going back a few months later. There's new people there because it's a college town, and they're gone. And you're like, oh, hey, is Megan here? And she's like, no, Megan doesn't live here. I recently moved in. Oh, okay. Well, are you registered to vote? Right. So now I have to give my whole speech again. And that's essentially how that works. You kind of just trying to get the area and remind them to vote and all these things there. And you run the convention. Just like I told you all when we talked about the council manager system, if the people elect the mayor, then the mayor has more power, right? Versus the mayor being chosen from the council, from one of the council members. Here's the issue. It's the opposite with the county chair or the district chair or senate chair or whatever, right? If we put this on the ballot to choose our county chair for the Republican Party or the county chair for the Democratic Party, and people vote for this in the primary and choose their candidate, right? Let's just say that they choose John, right? Because John is a popular guy and they all know him, right? We probably don't like John like that, meaning we as precinct chairs. So we have an executive committee with all the precinct chairs, right? It's probably like 15 of us in there, and we have to sit there while John talks to us about the future and how we're going to handle things in the county. And we're looking at John like, man, what are you talking about, John? And John's like, yeah, it's great. And his ideas may be great, but we don't care. You know why? Because John wasn't out there knocking on doors with us. Because John went out there with all these papers written down with names, trying to find Megan and other people at doors and trying to get people registered to vote. John just appeared out of nowhere, and everybody liked his name, and they voted for him on the ballot. And people who don't even go out on doors either, and they just showed up to just choose a name, right? So it's the opposite way with this. When the precinct chairs choose somebody, right? If we get together as precinct chairs, right, and we select Francis as our county chair, we select Francis because we know that Francis has been out there in the streets with us. Francis has been knocking on them doors, they're doing all kinds of stuff, right? So Francis out there even whenever we're not there, right? So we have more respect, so we're going to work harder for them. And it's like this in any field. When you see people and you're working with them and they've worked at the lowest level with you and they're working hard as well, versus somebody who just appears out of nowhere because he has, a bachelor's degree or something and he gets a job, you're like, man, you still don't know how to even work a machine. Whoop-de-doo, you went to school, right? And, and I'm not talking, clearly we're in college, so I'm not going to talk down on people in school. I'm just saying, when things shut down and, you're like, well, according to my a professor, you're supposed to do that. Man, if you don't get out of here, like, that's not even how that works. So, the experience I've always put ahead of education. but you need the education in order to get the job to do your experience. You know what I mean? But experience, you cannot trade experience for anything, right? Anyway, that's just my viewpoint. And then the county chairs get together and choose a state chair. And there we go. So, as we all know, right, Ronald Reagan, he becomes the president, and we start to see a lot of people just say, "Man, I'm joining old Ronald Reagan," right? A realignment is when voters transition from one stable party to another one. So now we're going to move from one party to another party, right? So this is not just voting for the party, but identifying with that party, right? You know, we had the thing of voting with the Republican, as president and things like this, but now we're identifying with that party, right? Clearly, the long-term economic trends have benefited the Republicans, at least at that time, right? They started to benefit them because of Ronald Reagan and things like that. And the fact that Reagan got shot and didn't die helped out too. Even though the economy was in debt, we were going into our early debt, the biggest debt that we had been in our history. I mean, clearly now, who even cares? The number is so large, we just stopped caring about it. Look at that. It's still about 30% of people claiming to be independent. Just stop it, right? So as we look at de-alignment, right? This is when a large number of voters refuse to identify with either of the parties, right? This is when people start saying, I'm an independent. I'm not identifying with any of them, right? And there are many split ticket voters. Most Democrats in Texas are split ticket voters. Republicans are not always split ticket voters. Like a lot of Republicans are not. Most Democrats in Texas are split ticket voters. Does anybody know why most Democrats are split ticket voters and most Republicans are not? Democrats able to think at a higher level and vote for other people. It's basically when you're voting for different parties on the ballot. So you vote for your party and you vote for another party. Republicans tend to just vote for their party. So my question is, does anybody know why most Democrats are split ticket voters? Are they just thinking at a higher level or something, or they're able to truly open their mind? That's the answer, Kip. Thank you very much. Thank you. Because that's what you get, right? You'll get a Republican and a Libertarian on the ticket. You got to choose one of them. I mean, you don't have to vote, but you got to choose one. You know what I mean? So you're like, I don't have a Democrat to vote for. I guess I'll vote for. So I got two options. I got one guy who says that you should have less things, and one guy who says that you shouldn't have any. So you're like, I guess I'm going to vote for the Republican who says you should have less because the Libertarian doesn't want you to have any. You know what I mean? Or you just vote Libertarian because it's not a Republican. I don't know. Right. But ultimately, you see on this ballot at times where it's always, normally where I am, there tends to just be a Republican and Libertarian at times. Right. And I think it's like this throughout most of the state. A Libertarian is a party. It's a big party here in Texas. We have a large number of Hispanics in the state. And I just think that, as we saw in that video, you can't be, operating as if the Hispanics, hey, you're Hispanic, aren't you? Let's talk about some immigrants, and you're like, man, I ain't trying to hear all that. I want to hear about taxes. I want to hear about other things too. Yeah, taxes for like immigrants? No. Taxes, I want to hear about, jobs and all these things like this. Yes. That's good because a lot of immigrants are looking for job. You see, and that's essentially how we've handled this over the years. First and foremost, working with the assumption that since they're brown that they're going to vote Democrat. Well, that would be wrong, right? And now you're moving to, well, they're only concerned with immigration, right? And that becomes another issue when, Hispanics, it says that 35% of the population. I would argue that there is not, that Hispanic, I would make the argument that there are more blacks than there are Hispanics as a race. And this is why. Because I don't believe that this is truly the coalition that people believe it is. Right? Let me just ask a question. Kathy, you're a Puerto Rican, right?
I know I'm Colombian.
Oh, okay. Uh, Leah, I'm sorry, I'm just basing this on your name. I'm pretty sure that you are from Honduras, or your people are, right? Leah? I'm asking y'all these questions because once I start to ask you these questions about Salvador, I'm assuming that you're this and you're that. You start to tell me, no, I'm Mexican. No, a Guatemalan. No, this and that. You start to realize that this is not really the cohort or group, right? Or demographic that we thought it was. These are a bunch of different people in a group that we've packed together because we don't really understand them or want to understand them. We're like, well, they're brown, they speak Spanish. Let's just put them in that group. You see, black people, we were all born on the Atlantic Ocean on the way here, right? We have no country to point to say, hey, I'm Nigerian, man. I'm this and that. We don't know. We just become a race of people, and you can take us as a block vote, right? I'm pretty sure if you look at Mexicans, you can take them as a block vote overall. A large chunk of them are going to vote a certain way, even if all of them don't. You can take a large chunk of certain groups who are going to vote a certain way. A lot of this is based on the treatment when they got here, or just the family history and all this stuff here. Cubans are clearly going to vote a different way based on them. When you step foot here, you get the red carpet laid out for you, and you get all these things here. The Puerto Ricans are citizens and stuff. Clearly, if you didn't know, Bad Bunny is an actual citizen who's going to be at the Super Bowl. If you didn't know, so you got all these people here who have different viewpoints, who we non-Hispanics have packed into a group and say Hispanics, and it doesn't really work like that. It's not the same sort of thing with them because they understand a history that's attached to them, right? It's like trying to tell someone who has German ancestry and pack them in there with someone who has an Irish ancestry. They still understand their ancestry. And so you can't really look at the group as a monolithic group. And if it's not a monolithic group, then you're probably not going to get a monolithic type of vote, right? So let's get through these slides. Um, So Billy Carr, right? Billy said that she wanted her funeral conducted in the same political tradition in which she has spent her entire life. She'll be a half hour late. She want to balance a delegation of pallbearers, black, brown, and gays, and an equal number of women. And Billy Carr was an interesting person. She said she walked up to Alan Shivers and she told him what she thought, and she didn't like him. And he's like, ma'am, I don't really care because I have the state in the palm of my hand. And so she gets out there and she works hard to take the Democratic Party away from the conservatives and ultimately got them to vote for Carter, in the election. On the way out, the Democrats said, the conservatives said, you can have the party, but you'll never win another election here. And they basically were right. The Democrats have not won many of those, those elections. Um, but Billy Carr worked hard and stuff like that, and she was called the actual godmother, because she was the reason, one of the main, if not the main reason, why the liberals took control over the Democratic Party in Texas. Um, we also had a pastor, um, you know, um, uh, here in Texas, who decided to to um, we had a pastor, we had a bunch of things going on, right? As you learn from the year of the liberals' rise of the Republican, and one of those things, right, was the pastor, um, sort of leading that charge against many, against the Democrats here in Texas. He was a fiery pastor. He was basically like Joel Osteen on steroids. Uh, very, very popular guy. Him, along with other wealthy, business guys, used to drop leaflets around the state and stuff to get people to see that these liberals at the top level were terrible people trying to ruin the country, and trying to encourage people and educate the people on what is liberalism and what is conservatism. And it was interesting because one of the, well, a couple of things was, one, first and foremost, we seen the parties out there, even after, the same day, that John F. Kennedy was killed, right? It was an article that was, I'm sorry, before John F. Kennedy, before he was elected, it was an article that came out in the newspaper in Dallas that said that if John F. Kennedy wins, then the tentacles of Catholicism will reach out and infect us all. And we started to see this shift and stuff, this weird shift toward, we have to do something about this, right? Even that day that John F. Kennedy was killed, there were articles that were written by the parties, by the Democratic Party members, trying to tell us that we have to stop John F. Kennedy. Um, so the pastor, let's get back to him, right? He goes there. It's in the 80s. He's speaking at the Republican National Convention dinner thingy, right? And he's speaking, and he's given the sermon, and ultimately he pauses, and he said, and he grabs the podium and says that we've been skulking at the word of God for far too long. And now God has rendered his justice on the lesbian and sodomite. And that justice is AIDS. It's the 1980s, right? Like, nobody really knows what's causing AIDS. But we do know that a lot of gay men have AIDS, or dying from it. And, so nobody knows how to treat it. We don't really know what this mysterious thing is. But once the pastor told us, we all knew what it came from. It came from, gay people, right? And it is hard to explain to any of, you who were not around, just the whole mindset of people and AIDS and things like that. And then Magic Johnson, he contracted HIV. It was like the greatest thing to have happened to the country was Magic Johnson getting HIV. Not a great thing for Magic Johnson, but a great thing for the country. And again, I know that you all are probably thinking that I'm crazy when I'm saying this, but you who are older know exactly what I'm talking about. When Magic Johnson got HIV, it changed people's mindset. They were like, hold on, how did he get it? He's like a man's man. He's not like a gay man, right? And I think people started to look at it in different ways, right? It was a bunch of ads running on television that said you can get HIV from sharing a needle and from doing this and from doing that and stuff like that. But it, hey, look, it wasn't Wilt Chamberlain, Clark. So at least it wasn't him, who supposedly had been with 20,000 women, according to him. But, you know, it worked out for us all because we started to really pay attention to this. I mean, I was young, so it wasn't like I'm sharing a needle or doing anything to catch it, right? But I'm just saying it worked out for the country because we actually start wondering, okay, So maybe this is not just, gay men who get it and we learn some things from it and stuff like that. So, um, but that pastor, he convinced a bunch of us that only gay guys can do it. It doesn't matter if you're with somebody, you can be with all kinds of people, but if two women are together, AIDS. If two men are together, AIDS. And as Clark mentioned, if you're with thousands of women and you're a man, then you're good as long as one of them is not accidentally a man. You know what I mean? And that was essentially, um, you know, how we were at the time. So thankfully, we're past that and we are educated on these things and stuff like that. All right. Thank y'all very much. You can still write a response about the interest group. We will start and finish that lecture next class. I believe, because we didn't really get into it. A political parties lecture is always exciting. It always has a lot of good stuff in it. So we will do that. No, actually, we do still have a couple. No, we don't. Yeah, so we'll get into the interest group lecture next class. So please check that out. Fairless paper number 10, please read that and write about that since that will be a response on your upcoming exam. You could search that on Google. It's the same thing since 1787. It hasn't changed. All right. Thank y'all very much. Thank you. Thank you.